It began with a whisper through a DM. "I can help you disappear." In the loneliness of Tokyo's neon nights, those words felt like mercy. But behind that glowing screen was not a friend. It was a hunter. He didn't chase his victims through alleys. He found them through hashtags, despair, and trust. 9 vanished in less than 60 days. Police would call his apartment a house of bones. The world would call him something worse. A man who turned social media into a hunting ground and loneliness into a weapon. This is not a legend. This is the true story of Takahiro Shiraishi, the Twitter killer. October 2017, in a quiet Tokyo suburb, police follow a digital breadcrumb trail that ends at a single apartment. Room 205. The corridor smells of rust and rain. The air is too still. Neighbors whisper they heard something weeks ago. A saw, maybe, or just imagination. Inside that 150-square-foot space, detectives find a world that feels more like an echo chamber than a home. Taped windows, muted light, and the humming of a refrigerator far too loud for such a small room. The man who lived here had seemed ordinary, polite, reserved, soft-spoken. He told his landlord he worked in recruiting. What no one knew was that he'd been recruiting something else entirely. On Twitter, he became a listener for the hopeless, searching for words like suicide, lonely, and end. He reached out to those who cried into the digital void, offering what he called comfort. The truth was far colder. He promised companionship, but delivered disappearance. 9 accounts went dark in less than 2 months. When investigators traced the last missing woman's messages, they all ended with the same name, Takahiro. Behind the door of room 205, Tokyo met its most haunting reflection, a man who transformed empathy into a trap. Outside, the rain kept falling, washing over the concrete, but not the memory. The case that would be called the Twitter killer had just been opened. After the discovery at room 205, investigators traced the glow backward, from one screen to another, from a single message to the entire network. What they uncovered was not chaos, but design. Every victim had crossed paths with the same account, a young man who offered to listen without judgment. His name on Twitter changed often, but his tone never did. Calm, empathetic, trustworthy. Through simple searches, he mapped Japan's silent epidemic of loneliness. Keywords like hashtag want to die, hashtag alone, and hashtag end, it all were the coordinates. Algorithms rewarded him with what he was looking for. The most vulnerable users surfaced to the top of his feed. He used empathy as a keyword. Direct messages began quietly. "Are you okay? You don't have to be alone." For some, it was the first time anyone had asked. Each conversation became a mirror. He listened, agreed, reflected their pain back at them. Police later described his tone as therapeutic. In those moments, the line between comfort and control disappeared. He built trust as if it were architecture, sentence by sentence, promise by promise. Many of the messages ended with meeting plans written like gentle exits. "Let's go together." By then, he didn't need to persuade them. They already felt seen. Investigators studying the logs realized the algorithm itself had been his accomplice, a system that connected loneliness to the one person searching for it. Japan's media called it a tragedy built from empathy. It forced the country to ask a new question. How do you regulate compassion when it becomes a weapon? Forensic analysts saved each chat, timestamp by timestamp, a digital diary of despair. Behind every polite message was a predatory precision. In the age of social media, he had found the perfect hunting ground and the perfect disguise. Before the murders had names, there was a single conversation that began like thousands of others. A young woman from Saitama posted a midnight tweet. "I don't want to be here anymore." Within minutes, a message appeared in her inbox. "I've felt the same. Let's talk somewhere safe." It was gentle, perfectly worded, the kind of empathy that sounds rehearsed only in hindsight. For investigators, that message became the origin point, the first thread in the web. They traced it back to Takahiro Shirashi, whose account changed daily, but whose rhythm never did. Every few hours he would search new keywords, scroll and wait. The digital world never slept, and neither did he. When the two finally met in person, CCTV captured nothing unusual. 2 umbrellas passing under a convenience store awning, no contact, no fear. She looked relieved, like someone finally understood. He looked ordinary, blending into the crowd of late-night commuters. Days later, her phone went silent. The chat history showed no threats, no violence, only calm sentences that ended in promises. "I'll help you rest." Police analysts later said the wording suggested consent, a terrifying illusion of choice. It blurred the boundary between comfort and surrender. For Japan's social media watchdogs, this case revealed something no algorithm could detect: emotional grooming through sympathy. It wasn't coercion by force, but by understanding. By replaying that first conversation, investigators realized how quickly trust can be built, and how invisible predation can sound. The message history now rests in the evidence archive, 16 lines of text that reshaped Japan's approach to online safety. It proved that empathy, when wielded by the wrong hands, could become a doorway to destruction. That first message still exists in the record. A single hello that opened the gate to 9 silent disappearances. The investigation into the missing began quietly, like most in Japan. Families filed reports, unsure if their loved ones had run away, found work, or simply disappeared into the city's noise. But detectives soon noticed a pattern. Every victim had gone missing after posting despair online. Their timelines formed a map of digital distress. By cross-referencing phone data and IP addresses, investigators found the same coordinates again and again: the small city of Zama. That coincidence became a lead. Forensics experts traced private messages, identifying an account that recycled the same phrases under different names. "I can help you. You won't be alone. Let's go together." The tone was identical each time. Working with Twitter Japan, cybercrime officers tracked login times and signal towers. They discovered the account's operator logged in daily between midnight and dawn from the same address. Room 205. Surveillance teams were dispatched discreetly, fearing public panic. Neighbors recalled small noises at night, a low hum, the sound of movement, maybe a tool. One woman said she assumed it was just another night shift worker. When officers finally knocked, no one answered. The air in the hallway felt thick, metallic. They broke the lock. What they found inside would change the tone of the entire investigation. Police reports never described it publicly, but what mattered more was what came after. Japan's Digital Forensics Division began cataloging every file, message, and device. Over the next weeks, they reconstructed conversations, metadata, and travel histories. A timeline of manipulation emerged. It wasn't chaos, it was method. The case became a national reckoning on how technology amplifies despair and how predators exploit empathy. Investigators called it an algorithmic crime. It was no longer about one man, but about the systems that helped him hide. The courtroom in Tokyo District Court filled with a silence heavier than any verdict. Journalists described it as sterile, almost clinical white walls, no cameras, only the soft hum of translators and reporters' pens. When Takahiro Shiraishi entered, he bowed politely to the judges. The contrast unsettled everyone. A man accused of 9 deaths moving with the manners of a clerk. Prosecutors read message logs line by line, showing how each promise of help became a path to harm. Defense lawyers argued diminished capacity. Psychologists spoke about control, fantasy, and empathy turned inside out. The victims' families sat together, holding photographs instead of words. Japan rarely publicizes emotion inside trials, but this one was different. It reopened the nation's conversation about mental health, suicide prevention, and the responsibility of social platforms. In December 2020, the court delivered its sentence death by hanging. The ruling called his crimes an exploitation of human despair. Public opinion split. Some saw justice served. Others asked if another death could heal mine. Universities began teaching the case in ethics courses. Lawmakers proposed new cyber safety reforms. By 2022, Twitter Japan introduced proactive monitoring for self-harm posts. Psychologists used the case to train volunteers on identifying digital grooming patterns. When execution was confirmed in 2025, headlines again filled screens, but this time the tone was weary, reflective. The story had stopped being about one man and started being about the conditions that created him. Takahiro Shiraishi's name would fade, but his method would remain a warning. In a world built on connection, Japan had learned how easily compassion could become camouflage. When the sentence was carried out in 2025, Japan did not celebrate. There were no crowds outside the courthouse, no applause, only a long, collective exhale. For many, the execution marked an ending. For others, it felt like another silence added to the pile. Online, the name Takahiro Shiraishi trended again, but this time as a ghost. His photos resurfaced in documentaries, his messages replayed by commentators, each trying to understand what the internet had created. Schools added cyber ethics sessions. The Ministry of Health launched campaigns encouraging people to reach out before despair became data. In 2023, Japan passed new guidelines requiring platforms to flag suicidal keywords for review by mental health responders. Twitter Japan Now X partnered with crisis lines to insert automated lifeline messages. The case had rewritten digital policy as deeply as it had scarred public trust. Sociologists called it the loneliness era, describing a generation that could speak to thousands online yet feel invisible. Psychologists studying the chats said Shiraishi's manipulation was not extraordinary. It was algorithmic empathy mirroring pain to gain control. His method forced governments and tech companies to consider a new question. How do you design compassion without allowing it to be weaponized? Documentaries, podcasts, and lectures turned the case into curriculum. Survivors and advocacy groups reframed it not as horror, but as education. Every retelling aimed to humanize the victims, to remind viewers that despair does not always scream. Sometimes it types quietly at 2 a.m. today. When someone in Japan tweets a cry for help, an automatic reply appears. You are not alone. Please reach out. A small sentence built from tragedy now stands guard where a predator once waited. The system changed, but only because 9 people trusted too easily. Their silence became the framework for prevention. Their stories, still studied, ensure that empathy online can mean safety again. If you thought the horror ended here, you're wrong. What other dark rituals and forbidden practices are still being performed in secret? Dive deeper into the chilling world of haunted ceremonies, banned footage, and eerie folklore that refuses to stay buried. Click on the playlist to uncover terrifying recordings, lost evidence, and disturbing stories they never wanted you to see. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for weekly uploads of spine-tingling footage and dark tales that echo from the shadows. This is the Forbidden's Archive, where the hidden truth and haunting evidence come to life.